Hi everyone, it's Ardith, and today I'm part of a video hop to celebrate Justine reaching 50,000 YouTube subscribers. Congratulations, Justine! Justine is giving away 5 $50 gift certificates to 5 randomly selected comments throughout the hop, so the more you watch and comment on, the better your chances of winning. Do you know about Justine's Technique Resource Binder class? There's more information linked below in the video description. This hop is all about favorite techniques, and I chose inlaid die cuts. Okay, so let's get started. I love inlaid die cuts. I think that smooth, flat look that you get is worth the time it takes to do some extra cutting and then piecing it back together. But to start, I'm going to quickly show you the ink blending I did so that I would have custom colored die cuts for my inlay techniques. I'll be using the Concord and 9th Big Thanks die, so I cut some panels to fit it. I blended a bunch of cool colors of Catherine Pooler ink onto plain white cardstock, Melon Ice, Lime Rickey, Fiesta Blue, Something Borrowed, Suede Shoes, and Queen for a Day. Notice that I started by blending on a pad of recycled newsprint. I wanted to compare it to blending on the Waffle Flower Water Media Mat. When I use the Water Media Mat, the ink stays wet on it, so if I don't clean it between my panels, I might get some ink contamination. My thinking was that with the newsprint, the ink would soak in and dry a bit, and I wouldn't have that problem. But I did. I didn't show the second and third panels because, well, boring, but my blending brushes were picking up ink from the newsprint. So I switched to the Water Media Mat because it's easy to clean and it's reusable, so at least it's better than the newsprint in that way. I also wanted some little pops of pink, so I got out Coral Cabana and Be Mine to blend a small strip of cardstock. This time I used sponge dauber since the area was so small. And after about 3 seconds, I realized that my coral was looking decidedly more like party dress. And yes, sure enough, I had mixed up the ink pad lids last time I used them. I started on the other end and I blended my original choices, but I kept the one with party dress just in case I liked it better. I didn't in the end, but that's okay. It's always good to have options. So now let's get to the inlaid die cuts. I'm starting with a trimmed white panel and I cut the Big Thanks die out from it. I also grabbed a little heart from Rainbow Wishes and I cut that from the panel. I ran it all through my Gemini Junior and here's what I got. I need to keep the letter centers because they'll go back into the card. This is a really good die for simple inlaid die cutting because it's all one piece and the letter centers are all big enough and very distinguishable, and they'll fit right back into that card easily, just like puzzle pieces. I'm putting the panel onto a black panel for some good contrast, and here's how I like to do it. I put a coating of tape runner all over the black panel. I make sure that it's fully covered so when I put the white panel on top, I can put the die cuts into the corresponding holes and it's already sticky. When I put the white panel on the black one, I don't press it all the way down quite yet. Sometimes some of the bits can shift without the actual die cut in it, and they may need to be adjusted. Next, I grabbed one of my ink blended pieces and I put the die onto it. I couldn't decide exactly how I wanted it placed. I really wanted a lot of that deep purple from the bottom. I love that contrast. I ran it through the Gemini Junior as well, and I got this pretty colorful die cut that will look fabulous on the black and white background. It easily popped right into the area of the card, but you can see that I did have to do a little bit of adjusting in the center because that one white area shifted a bit. Now that the die cut is there, it'll all fit together perfectly. But that's another reason I like to use the tape runner. It's very forgiving and the pieces can be lifted and shifted if I need to. Next, I simply popped in the letter centers in place, and again this is so easy because they're large and easily identifiable. I cut the little heart from that scrap of cardstock I had blended, and it pops right in perfectly. My final step is to burnish the back of the project with a bone folder. This ensures that all the pieces are really stuck down in place. I wasn't intending to make 2 cards, but you can clearly see that I had all the pieces here to do it, so I did. This time I used a white card base, and I coated that with the tape runner. I put the blended panel on top, and then I inlaid the white die cut, and I finished it off with the blended letter centers. Again, I burnished it to make sure everything was secure, and now I have 2 cards from that one design. Easy and efficient. Now that was a simple card. Let's step it up a notch and add some contrast. Again, I'm starting with a trimmed white panel. This time I'm using a circle die from the Concord and 9th Everyday Circle die set. This is a two-part die, a stitched circle with a tiny frame. I cut it out of the white panel, and I also cut it from black cardstock. Now this time I'm going to use a scrap of thin paper to be my backing. I want it to be thin because we're going to be inlaying another time, so it needs to be able to go through the Gemini Junior and get a clean cut. And now the same process. Tape runner all over the base, put the die into the hole, and then flip it over to burnish it to get it really stuck together. Now this black and white panel has become the base panel, and I'm going to follow the exact same process I did on the first card and run the thanks and heart through my Gemini Junior. When it comes out, I keep all the bits for inlaying later. Here's one big difference. This time I used Be Creative tape on the back rather than glue runner. This is not my preferred method because it's so sticky, it's really less forgiving if you have to start adjusting things. But I did want to show you that it does work. You just may need to be a little more careful about getting the die cuts perfectly placed the first time. Then I use the same process for putting the letter centers in. I used the die release tool to poke out the blue heart I had cut, and then I put the pink heart in. Then I flipped the whole thing over and I gave it a good burnish. And now here's another reason I don't always use this tape. I always seem to have trouble getting the release paper off. Once again, the die release tool to the rescue. I put the panel onto the card base, and again you have to get that positioning right the first time because this tape is sticky. But I love this one. I think that pop of black is the perfect contrast. Now are you ready for the next one? It turned out to be even more complicated than I thought it would, but don't worry because it all turns out. And I even ended up with a bonus 2-for-1 card. So this time I have a full-size blended panel, and I cut the arcs from Rainbow Wishes from it. I left these arc dies connected to make it easier, and I started by cutting the larger side. If I did this again, I would cut 2 of the smaller side. They would have fit more easily on the blended panel, but also onto the finished card. When it came out of the Gemini, I noticed that the arcs had shifted a bit. This is fine for this piece, but on the white piece where I want to inlay these blended arcs, I'll need to make sure that they're spaced properly to get a good finished look. And here's where I had to figure out how to get the rest of the arcs cut out of this panel. As I said, I got out the smaller set and it worked fine. I taped it so it wouldn't move. I put each set of arcs into a separate pile to make it easier when I put them back together. And now I'm cutting the arcs from my main white panel. I put the smaller side on top and the larger side on the bottom. And I can tell just by looking that when this comes out, it's going to be cut right in half, and there's going to be several pieces of white cardstock to put back together. But I'm up to the challenge. Again, I'm taping these arcs so that they don't shift during cutting. And here it is. Watch this. At this point, it's very important to keep everything organized so I don't lose it all. And again, I'm going with the scrap paper backer method. I started to cut some Be Creative tape, and then I realized that this is going to be tricky, and I knew I would need to be lifting up and repositioning pieces, so I put it right back down and I got out my tape runner. So even though I've been doing inlaid die cuts for years, this one stumped me a bit. I flipped over the center white piece and I put the arcs in before securing them with Scotch tape. This took a minute of fiddling around, but I got there in the end. And having all those as one piece made it much simpler to get started on the panel. Once I had the center piece down on that scrap piece of paper, I added the outside arcs and then the top and bottom white pieces. There's no question that this was the fiddliest part, but it wasn't difficult, just a bit time-consuming. Once again, I burnished the back and then I trimmed off the overhanging arcs. Now this is the panel that I'm going to cut the thanks from, and it gets easier from here. Once again, I'm following the exact same process. First, I ran the panel through my Gemini with the thanks die, This time I had to take a bit more care separating the die from the panel because the paper I had used as backing was a bit thicker from the previous time. It still cut fine though, and this is where I got the bonus card. I thought that the thanks die cut looked really neat, and when I put it up against a black panel, look at that! I love happy surprises like this. But let's finish this one. I cut the black thanks to inlay into the panel, and I put the whole thing onto a white card base. I went back to the Be Creative tape because I was figuring that this one was going to be easy at this point. But I did have to adjust it just a bit, and I made it work. The key is not to press down onto the tape until you're really sure you've got everything in place. Then I put the letter centers in, and the pink heart, and I glued it all to the white card base. And there it is! Phew! It all worked out in the end. I actually really like the look of this one. And I love how the reverse one turned out too. This time I used the heart with the green arc in it to help continue that circular line a bit further. So now here's all the cards I made, from the simple beginning to the medium middle to the complicated end. And then I got another bonus. As I was cleaning up, I had enough leftovers to do this final one. 6 cards in one afternoon. Which one's your favorite? I hope you're inspired to give inlaid die cuts a try. You can start off easy and work your way up. Now don't forget to hop and comment for your chance to win one of the $50 gift certificates. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up below and subscribe to my channel for more inspiration. Product links are below in the description and also on my blog. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.